One day, after a small disagreement with his friend Chidori, two bullies named Yoshizawa and Kamaishi come to beat up Katsuhira. However, his classmate Tanga comes to his rescue and beats the bullies back. Tanga likes to joke around. As he's sitting on one of the bullies' faces, he makes an offer to Katsuhira to be his bodyguard, so long as Katsuhira gives him 20% of his money. Katsuhira refuses as he has no problem with getting beat, revealing that he is incapable of feeling pain. He's telling Tanga a little bit of his backstory when suddenly, their mysterious classmate Sonozaki Noriko appears out of nowhere to say some cryptic words to the two boys. We don't know what Sonozaki did to them, but Katsuhira wakes up confused on the rooftop of the school building with no one around him except Sonozaki. To make him more confused, Sonozaki starts to talk about the 7 deadly sins out of context. She explains how in the modern society of Japan, the 7 deadly sins manifest themselves in different ways. So instead of pride, greed, lust, envy, wrath, gluttony, and sloth, they have the two-faced normies, the high and mighty, the goody two-shoes, the eccentric headcase, and the imbecile. It seems like there are only 5 sins now, according to her. Sonozaki implies that Katsuhira is the imbecile. According to her, the fact that Katsuhira never gets scared is what makes him always get bullied, and because of that, nobody can find themselves within him. She then proceeds to corner him at the top of the stairs, and without anyone knowing why, she pushes him. The badly injured Katsuhira wakes up to find himself being carried on a gurney by 4 mascots with oversized wobbly heads called Gomorin, in a hospital that has a freaking disco ball in its corridor. The mascots push him into a dark room. As the light turns on, he's greeted by Sonozaki, who congratulates him with a flower. There are 5 people behind him, including Chidori and Tanga. The other 3 are Yuta Tsuguhito, the two-faced serial dater, Niyama Nico, the eccentric and overly childish girl who speaks in a high-pitched voice and believes in fairies, and Maki Honoka, the high and mighty cold girl Yuta seems to be interested in. Sonozaki gathers all of them here because they've been bound by wounds. She begins to explain what that means. Apparently, the city they live in isn't just an ordinary city. It was specifically developed to execute an experiment known as the Kizna system. The 6 of them have been kidnapped so that they can be equipped with the Kizna system through surgery. And now, thanks to Katsuhira, it can be confirmed that they're finally connected. Oh, by the way, we now know what the 6th deadly sin is. It's the musclehead thug, referring to Tanga. Anyway, if it wasn't for the Kizuna system, Katsuhira would have been dead by now due to the injury he sustained from the fall. The system let his pain be shared with the other 5 people, so he's now still alive. However, none of them seem to get what Sonozaki is talking about. When asked about the purpose of this system, Sonozaki says something about creating a peaceful world, but doesn't elaborate on its meaning. The other students feel like whatever that is, it's ridiculous and they're just wasting time there, so they slip out of the room, except for Katsuhira. He stays there to demand an explanation about what Sonozaki said earlier regarding the fact that nobody can find themselves within him. But again, Sonozaki doesn't give a direct answer. She just tells him to seek out a bond, as she can't even put the answer in words. As the other 5 students walk in the hospital corridor, Nico stops to peek inside a room to find Sandman, which she believes to be a fairy of sleep. The others look perplexed and annoyed. Tanga makes fun of her by asking if they're just a part of her dream, so he fondles her breasts to wake her up for her dream. In reaction to his, Nico slaps Tanga really hard. Then it starts to hit all of them, quite literally. Tanga is not the only one who feels the pain from the slap. The others feel it too. They finally realize what Sonozaki meant by sharing the pain. If one of the 6 people is hurt, the other 5 also get hurt. A scar shaped like a lightning bolt emerges on each of their wrists. It's called the Kizna mark. Through the public speaker, Sonozaki speaks to them. From now on, the students who are bound by their wounds should face challenges together. She calls them the Kiznaivers. Meanwhile, the mayor of Sugimori City is casually playing golf while he casually asks one of his employees about the Kizna project as if it's not a big deal. Behind him, the Kiznaivers' chemistry teacher, Yamada, and a cold woman who happens to be the school counselor, Urushibara, seem to also be aware of the program. They're talking about their chosen students in a nonchalant way. Urushibara mentions that Sonozaki is her favorite among all of them. Back to the Kiznaivers, their Kizna marks show a text that reads Mission Self-Introduction. Sonozaki says that from now on, they'll be clearing missions together as a team. This mission is their first one. At first, the Kiznaivers don't think too much about it. They take the name of the mission literally and start introducing their names, their school, and their class one by one in front of the security camera, which is connected to Sonozaki's monitor. But the answer turns out to be wrong, and for every wrong answer, Katsuhira, who's bound in the room with Sonozaki, gets electrocuted as a penalty. This leads the other 5 to feel the electrocution as well. Sonozaki gives a clue that the introduction needs to be something deeper. Tanga then confidently introduces himself one more time. He gives us his birthday, zodiac, blood type, and hobbies, but this answer is still wrong. They get electrocuted once more. Again, Sonozaki gives a clue about the introduction they should give, which is basically the same as what she just said before, so it still gets them nowhere. Nico whispers to suggest they drag it out and just not say anything, but Sonozaki hears this and stuns them once more. Apparently, they have to give at least one answer every 10 minutes, otherwise they'll get a penalty. Uta tries to impress the others by giving a useful suggestion. He proposes they just go back to the room and save Katsuhira instead. Of course, Sonozaki doesn't allow this. She closes every door that can lead to Katsuhira, so now the 5 Kiznevas have no other choice than to play Sonozaki's game. Chidori is enraged. She says it's not fair that Katsuhira is the only one who's getting hurt. Hearing this, Sonozaki agrees, so she lets the others sustain the damage equally. Suddenly, 2 pairs of red eyes appear behind the glass wall in front of them. 2 growling, bloodthirsty dogs jump out and break the glass. Everyone looks scared. The girls hold each other. But surprisingly, nobody in that room seems to be more scared than Tanga. He screams and runs as fast as he can in whatever direction he can go to avoid the dogs. At one point, he slips while running down the stairs. Even the scared girls are now looking at him confused. Tanga still can't outrun the dogs though, no matter how fast he runs. He gets cornered in one room and can only cry. In his moment of despair, he screams out, "I'm scared of dogs!" That's when another hologram appears on each of the Kiznevas' wrists. This time it says, "Congratulations." And the dogs with glaring eyes that went wild just seconds ago become very friendly. The Kiznevas realize the fact that Tanga is terrified of dogs is the correct answer to his self-introduction. Every person's answer needs to be something they want anyone to find out the least, a deep secret within their heart. While still crying, Tanga admits that he doesn't want anyone to know he's scared of dogs because it's embarrassing for him who likes to act tough. What comes after this is way more extreme than just a couple of dogs. The building starts to get demolished part by part, and the destruction comes closer and closer to where the Kiznevas are trapped. A countdown starts to show up. At first it shows an hour time limit, seconds later it becomes 29 minutes, then 24 minutes, then 12 minutes. The building collapses more and more as the countdown gets nearer to 0. They're all going frantic, demanding each other to say their secret. Maki just runs away from the scene. Finally, in panic, Nico screams out, "I don't believe in fairies!" The countdown stops abruptly and the building is safe. Nico's answer is correct. She tries to justify herself, saying that she doesn't want to be hated because she feels too perfect. So she acts like a lunatic who believes in fairies. Realizing that everyone will call her a fake eccentric, Nico feels like this is the end of her world. But the others don't think so. Tanga and Chidori say she's still eccentric even without faking it. Hearing this, Nico is overjoyed. She hops around the room and points at a poster, commenting that the chubby kid in it looks so happy. Somehow, Yuta's face turns blue. She runs at Nico, looking fearful, while demanding her to stop looking at it. It turns out the chubby boy in the poster was Uta when he was a 6th grader. He used to be fat until the end of middle school, but is too embarrassed to acknowledge it. Tanga can't contain his laughter knowing about this fact. Now there are only 2 people left who haven't said their secret out loud: Chidori and Maki. Since Maki isn't in the room with them, they demand Chidori to give an answer, but she doesn't know what her deepest secret is. They suddenly hear Katsuhira's voice from the distance. The 4 Kiznevas arrive at the rooftop of the building to find out that Katsuhira is being used as bait. Chidori needs to say her secret out loud ASAP if she doesn't want Katsuhira to die. Katsuhira asks to say his secret first, but he just says some basic things everyone already knows, such as he can't connect with people, and he's not interested in himself. This triggers Chidori. She grabs the microphone from Katsuhira, telling him how he was cheerful, kind, and funny before they started grade school, but now he has changed. As she almost cries, she confesses that she loves Katsuhira, who used to be like that. This turns out to be the right answer to Chidori's secret. Both of them are safe now. Chidori can't hold her tears. She tells Katsuhira how she misses the old him, and she has been looking for a way to bring his lively personality back. Katsuhira admits that he never realized that Chidori likes him, but he's happy to hear that. Once he finishes speaking, a mission clear message appears on the Kiznevas' wrists. Sonozaki says that she can accept Katsuhira's confession because Katsuhira himself has forgotten it. But where is Maki? Maki ends up in a mortuary after running away from the other Kiznevas. She sees a locker labeled Charles de Making and gets terrified. That's also when another locker opens to reveal a corpse calling her name repeatedly. Sonozaki is about to explain Maki's situation, but all of a sudden, she shows up, takes the mic and confesses, "I killed someone." It seems like everyone believes her for a second because they look genuinely stunned. However, in her usual indifferent attitude, Maki shrugs it off and says, "It's a joke." Before dismissing the Kiznaivas, Sonozaki explains their next mission, which is to survive until the summer ends. If they manage to do it, they'll be free from the Kizna system. Even though the Kiznaivas still have a lot of questions regarding this, Sonozaki just walks away. The next morning, we see Tanga lying around in Katsuhira's apartment. Katsuhira's parents seem to be on business trips. Suddenly, both of them get struck by a pain attack. Shortly after it happens, the hologram text that reads D7 appears from Katsuhira's wrist. Chidori calls Katsuhira to ask about the pain earlier. She also seems to have no idea where it comes from. It's then revealed that Katsuhira and Chidori's apartments are next to each other. This explains why Chidori has known Katsuhira since they were little. When Katsuhira, Chidori and Tanga are walking to school, they realize something. They can only feel the other's primary pain inflicted for the first time. They can't feel the residual pain that lingers after someone gets injured. At school, the Kiznaivas ask each other about the pain they felt that morning. Yet nobody seems to have gotten hurt at all. While they're gathering at the school rooftop to discuss this matter, they get shocked by another episode of pain. Katsuhira checks his wrist and the text D7 appears again. The fact that all of them are in the same place but nobody is hurt means that there's one more Kiznaiva besides them. Sonozaki then contacts them through their Kizna marks. She assigns them a new mission, which is to find the 7th member of the Kiznaivas. Uta asks the girls he's dating about any wound, but they just look at him weirdly. Tanga tries to interrogate a guy about it, but to no avail. It looks like Nico has the best idea. She stays in the class and pokes Katsuhira's head again and again. Since all the confirmed Kiznaivas are from the same class, it would make sense if the other one also does. So she tries to see if anyone in the class reacts to the pain she inflicts on Katsuhira. Well, there's no reaction, but they notice something. One member of the class has been missing since the beginning of the school year. His name is Hisomu Yoshiharu. They decide to check out his apartment. Yet when they ring the bell, nobody answers the door. Nico once again helps the group by giving them a big hint. According to her, his name sounds like a regular patient in his dad's hospital. He's always bruised and injured, and he's in for short-term stays all the time. Tanga is resolved to help this guy whatever the situation he's in. He slaps Katsuhira's back quite hard as he announces this. Strangely, a scream is heard from inside the apartment. Before they know it, Hisomu already slips out from the back door. The other Kiznaivas try to get him. They chase him through a department store. Each time someone gets hit, Hisomu makes a loud and weird sound. Yet, they still can't catch him. Finally, Katsuhira manages to stop Hisomu on a pedestrian bridge. He says that he wants to connect with Hisomu because he's a Kiznaivas as well. After hearing this, Hisomu presses Katsuhira on the bridge railing, challenging Katsuhira to die for him. Thankfully, the others arrive just in time. Hisomu releases Katsuhira but walks away from them again. Tanga feels like convincing Hisomu with words will lead to nowhere, so he has a better idea, and that is to make Hisomu feel the pain himself. He gets ready to jump from the bridge. The problem is his legs can't stop shaking. Meanwhile, without them realizing it, Katsuhira is already standing at the opposite rail. Before anyone can stop him, he jumps into the street. His body collides with a truck and he passes out. Tanga and Chidori go to check on him while the other three go to check on Hisomu. At first, Katsuhira's sacrifice doesn't seem to go to waste because Hisomu also falls headfirst down the stairs. They even get worried and try to wake him up. But when they turn over his body, oh god. Yup, he's climaxing. All this time, Hisomu has just been a huge freaking masochist. As he moans, their scars show that the mission has been completed. Somewhere far from them, Sonozaki is giving a formal speech regarding the Kizna program. According to her speech, the goal of the Kiznaivas is to achieve a true connection. However, even after a lengthy speech in a fancy setting like that, we still have no clue what she really means by that. At least now we know Hisomu's 7 deadly sins name. It's the immoral. While passing out, Katsuhira has a dream about the mysterious girl again. This time we might know who the girl is. She starts to manifest herself as Sonoza. Nope. He wakes up to Chidori hitting himself. Anyway, in Katsuhira's apartment, Hisomu admits that he's indeed a masochist, and a deranged one. He even says that it would turn him on to be connected to a farm-raised tuna. Katsuhira thought he wasn't in the hospital with the other Kiznaivas through their first mission, but turns out He actually was, somehow. He just got special treatment from Sonozaki. When he woke up from the surgery, Sonozaki gave him a pack of medicine labeled as Bond. He was likely taken by the Gomorrans to watch the other Kiznaivas through the monitor after that. Hearing this conversation, Chidori grumpily suspects Katsuhira as being interested in Sonozaki. Katsuhira points out how it's weird that Sonozaki is not included with them. It looks like there's something he wants to say about Sonozaki, but he just keeps it to himself. One thing is clear though. Chidori is definitely jealous. A few days later, Yamada the teacher is announcing the details of their summer break when Hisomu shows up to the class for the first time since school started. The girls are obsessed with him. Nobody expected him to look that good. Of course, Uta is annoyed now that he has a rival. As Uta confronts Hisomu about making a sudden appearance on their way home, Nico intervenes to lighten up the situation. She suggests the Kiznaives exchange email addresses so that they can inform each other before they do something that might create a surprise. By the way, sure, Nico may be annoying, but don't you think she's the most useful Kiznaiva until now? Okay, continue. They were just talking about not surprising one another, but all of a sudden, Sonozaki appears out of nowhere, startling all of them. She brings them to a restaurant where a huge pile of fried rice has already been prepared for them. The Kiznaivas are expected, or more like ordered to eat the rice from the same bowl, to strengthen their bonds before their summer camp starts. They demand more explanation about this. But all Sonozaki does is promise to disclose secrets regarding Kiznaivas if they agree to participate in the summer camp. Then she leaves the restaurant without giving more explanation, as always. Katsuhira follows Sonozaki outside, followed by Chidori. He asks Sonozaki to join them in the summer camp. Both of them then exchange email addresses. Even though Chidori doesn't say it out loud, it's clear that she disapproves of this. Remember the two bullies who beat Katsuhira earlier? They're now at the game station, complaining about not having enough money. Yoshizawa blames Tanga for it and even mentions that he wants to kill him. While they're playing, Urushibara appears behind them. The three of them have a short conversation before Urushibara shoots real bullets into an FPS game screen, scaring the two students. The next day, the Kiznaivas gather in front of their school gate. An ominous-looking bus and two Gomorrans are waiting for them. To their surprise, Sonozaki is already inside the bus when they enter it. It looks like Katsuhira has succeeded at persuading her. The bus ride feels so awkward. None of them says anything. Tanga, the clown of the group, tries to lighten up the mood by initiating a word chain game. It doesn't work though. So instead, Maki demands Sonozaki to tell them the secrets about the Kiznaivas as she has promised. Sonozaki begins by giving a background on the Kizna committee, which is a group she's part of that is responsible for the Kizna experiment. About 1/3 of the city used to be part of the committee, but the number of participants has been decreasing. The committee consists of Kizna's system development team as well as their sponsors. Additionally, the sponsors come not only from Japan but also around the world. Also, Gomorrans, the wobbly head mascots, turn out to be the regular members of the committee who work behind the scenes. Well, not so behind the scenes. But still, when asked about their true goal, Sonozaki refuses to give an answer and changes the subject instead. Meanwhile, the two bullies are tied inside a car. Somehow, they have Kizna marks on their forehead. Although they don't look the same as the Kiznaivas marks, they still mimic them. In the car, there are also Urushibara, Yamada, and a Gomorran as a driver. We know that two bullies now have the Kiznaivas' ability to share pain, because when Urushibara flicks one of their foreheads, it triggers a shock of pain episode in the other as well. When the car makes a stop, the bullies see a group of Gomorrans and ask if they're also wellbound. They protest when they find out that the Gomorrans are not. But Urushibara subtly implies that Yoshizawa can kill Tanga if he just listens to her. At the resort they're staying at, Tanga starts to notice Chidori's feelings for Katsuhira. He tries to match them up. However, Chidori still refuses to accept her own feelings. At night, all the girls are taking a bath together except for Maki. We don't know what she's dealing with, but we see her talking on the phone with a serious tone, mentioning something about declining an offer. The phone call is ended abruptly by someone at the other end of the line. Shortly after, she has some kind of a hallucination, you can say, of someone calling her name over and over again and telling her to break, similar to what she went through in the hospital. After leaving the bathroom, Sonozaki walks into the hallway and bumps into Katsuhira. They have a conversation, and again, Katsuhira brings up her remark about connecting with someone else. Sonozaki doesn't give an answer to this, but she just points at Katsuhira's cheek. Coincidentally, Chidori is walking through the end of the hallway when she witnesses Katsuhira's and Sonozaki's cheeks get closer. To her, it looks like they're kissing. Suddenly, an episode of pain hits Katsuhira and Chidori. We don't know where it comes from, but Chidori runs away from the resort looking like she's about to cry. It's revealed that Sonozaki and Katsuhira were not kissing. Sonozaki was just trying to kill the mosquito on Katsuhira's cheek. Back to Maki, she finds Uta going through the fridge in the middle of the night, so she decides to cook him a meal. They then have a serious conversation, revealing a little bit about themselves. At one point, Uta gets taken aback by Maki's question of whether he likes her boobs. He says, yes. Then Maki gets closer to Uta and asks if he wants to see her boobs. However, Uta turns her down. Maki then forcefully pins him down to the floor. She says that being rejected makes her want to do it even more. But before she can do anything, Yamada comes out of nowhere and interferes with them. Sonozaki then introduces Yamada and Urushibara as the members of the Kizna committee in the main room. In the committee, they're called Yamada and Urushii. The Kiznaivas then realize that Chidori is missing. Suddenly, all the lights are off and they're greeted by a new mission. It's called the Test of Courage. According to Urushibara, the mission will end when they succeed in finding Chidori. Some Gormarins suddenly show themselves to threaten the Kiznaivas with chainsaws. Uta thinks they should run from the resort as soon as possible to find Chidori rather than getting killed by the Gormarins. All of them agree and so they escape. Only a moment after they outrun the Gormarins, they see gravestones already written with their name. Another group of Gormarins try to corner and scare them. But the Kiznaivas are not that stupid. They realize the Gormarins now aren't equipped with any weapons, so they fight them back with whatever weapon they can find. Apparently, one of the Gormarins is Yoshizawa, who wants to kill Tanga. But Nico once again comes to the rescue by giving him a really hard blow to his head, knocking him unconscious. Tanga then orders Katsuhira to find Chidori. What's happened to Chidori, though? She's being chased by a Gomorin who is actually Kamaishi and now hiding in a shed. Kamaishi is one step away from catching her, but because Nico just knocked Yoshizawa out, he also gets knocked out. His Gomorin mask is taken off, and Chidori immediately recognizes that he's Kamaishi. Kamaishi attempts to justify himself by saying that it's all Yoshizawa's fault that he ends up like that, but Chidori can't take that. She berates and demands him to give back all the money he's taken from Katsuhira. In anger, she complains about how agonizing it is to see Katsuhira getting beaten and extorted for his money, especially now that she can feel his pain. Not only can she feel his physical pain, but she also feels sadness in her chest. As Chidori expresses her emotions, the Kiznaivas' wrists, including her own, light up. The others are running when they notice a weird feeling inside. It's not physical pain, but it makes their stomach feel heavy. It's unpleasant and distressing, leading them to want to cry. The feeling just gets worse and worse every step. Tanga even says that it's better to get hurt physically than to experience this. Hisomu also doesn't like it, even though we know how big of a masochist he is. Finally, as if led by something, the Kiznaivas arrive at the shed, where Chidori is located. Chidori continues to express her anger at Kamishi, but Katsuhira interrupts her when she starts to bring up Sonozaki. Unable to say anything, Chidori steps back and lets Katsuhira do his thing. We finally have character development as Katsuhira asks for his money back and does not just surrender to his bully like before. After listening to everything Chidori has just said, he realizes his mistakes and doesn't want to make them feel hurt anymore. Finally, the Kiznaivas go back to the resort with Katsuhira, carrying Chidori on his back as the sun rises. The story shifts its focus to Maki. For a brief moment, we see her flashback. In this memory, she was walking with a cheerful girl whom she called Ruru along the sea. That girl mentions the name Maki saw written on one of the mortuary's lockers, Charles de Making. Maki says the name sounds stupid. Ruru then asks Maki, "Do you want to be free of me?" She then suddenly spreads her hand and drops herself down. Maki is horrified. She spontaneously drops her sketchbook and pulls Ruru's shirt in panic. She manages to save Ruru, and as a result, Ruru falls on top of Maki. Ruru proceeds to laugh as if what she just did before was not something that would make anyone's heart stop. Back to the present day, it turns out that Sonozaki had left them before the Kiznaivas arrived at the resort. However, she did call them to explain the situation. She informs that the Kizna experiment doesn't only let them share physical pain but also psychological pain in their hearts. Therefore, the weird feeling they had experienced earlier was not someone getting injured. It was Chidori's frustration and anger that got shared with the other Kiznaivas. It was also that emotional connection that led them to find Chidori. This is the first time the experiment made it that far. Even though they can only share vague emotions for now, there's a potential they may be able to project their thoughts in the later stage. They're now gathering at their base, aka Katsuhira's place. Maki coldly asks permission to leave. Nico follows her to be friendly, but Maki replies, I don't need friends. Sonozaki meets with the mayor. He reveals to her that 3 of their sponsors have stepped back from the experiment and asks for her help. As she's on her way back from the mayor's office in the car with Yamada and Urushibara, she injects something through her arm. She also brings back the talk about the 7 deadly sins, in which she admits that none of the Kiznavas live up to their name. Instead, the real sin is the forgetful faker. Uta is hanging out with the usual girls he's close to. They introduce him to a shoujo manga written by someone under the pen name Charles de Macking. He notices something is off when he reads a line that sounds exactly like what Maki has said to him. At this exact moment, he gets an episode of pain, which we don't know whether it's physical or emotional. But when she looks outside a window of the cafe, Honoka is walking with an unknown man. The man turns out to be an editor from a small production company. He takes Maki to a restaurant where he persuades her to let him make a documentary about her and Ruru. Without saying anything to his proposal, Maki stands up and leaves. The persistent man bows to her feet and attracts other people's attention. Thankfully, Uta comes just in time to stop the man from bothering her. In Katsuhira's apartment, the Kiznavas excluding Maki discuss the weird feeling they've had in the last few days. There's something they also realize. Unlike the physical pain that goes away after the first time one of them feels it, emotional pain can linger. Uta shows the poster of the upcoming documentary, which has 2 girls holding hands shot from their backs. He's 100% sure that one of them is Maki. He also shows them a Yuri Shujo manga titled The Promise from Heaven, which is written by Charles de Macking. The story of the manga itself is nothing but ordinary, but the fact that it's written by 2 middle school girls is what makes it so popular. Not long after it was published, the girls disappeared. There's even a rumor that one of them is dead. They trace back their memories to when Maki said that she killed someone but quickly brush it off because it just doesn't make sense that it's true. Suddenly they receive a new mission, which is to gather at the school and save Maki. Weirdly, Sonozaki informs them that Maki herself doesn't know about this mission. Instead, Maki receives a different mission, which is to attend the summer vacation class. Following the mission, Maki goes to the school and is caught by a group of filming crew. Of course, it creates a ruckus, especially after the students hear the interviewer call her Charles de Macking. Maki is extremely anxious. Once again, she gets a hallucination of Ruru. In this hallucination, Ruru says, "You'll never be free from me forever." The Kiznavas come just in time to clear their mission. Surprisingly, they do it so easily. Tanga, Uta, and Hisomu just have to scare the crew, and they all run away. But when Maki hears from Tanga about their mission, she gets away from them. Katsuhira thinks they should visit Ruru's house, or try to find out which middle school Maki and Ruru went to so they can find out the truth and help Maki. Seems like it doesn't take long for the Kiznavas to find Ruru's parents' house. Her dad begins to tell her story. Not long after she was born, she was diagnosed with chronic kidney disease. Since then, she has been suffering. The doctor predicted that she wouldn't live long. Despite that, she had always been a carefree and positive child, acting like nothing was wrong. And just like everyone predicted, she died because of her disease. However, Ruru's mom strongly blames Maki for her death. According to her, Maki abandoned Ruru, implying that Maki left her at the end of her life. As she cries in frustration, she also says that Ruru finished the last chapter of the manga by herself without Maki's help. Meanwhile, Maki is reminiscing her memories with Ruru. Ruru first approached her because Maki was always alone, just like herself. They both liked drawing manga. Ruru's drawing skills were on another level, but her storytelling was awful. On the other hand, Maki's drawing skills needed improvement, but she had a knack for creating awesome stories. Because of this, they decided to work together to make a manga. They believed they could fill in each other's weaknesses if they were together. One day, Ruru was crying on the bed. Maki got worried and came to her, but it turned out that Ruru was just faking it. In an instant, Ruru turned Maki over on the bed. While still in her cheerful way of speaking, Ruru suggested they try to have sex so that they could properly draw a sex scene for the manga. Maki looked nervous and she was out of words. Ruru's lips were getting closer and closer to hers. But all of a sudden, Maki pushed her away. After getting turned down by Maki, Ruru smiled and said that it was a joke. Starting from that moment, Maki slowly pulled herself away from Ruru. As she remembers everything, Maki's chest hurts so bad that it can be felt by the other Kiznavas. Meanwhile, we now know that it's actually Sonozaki who sponsors the film company that is trying to make a documentary about Charles de Macking. Through a phone call, she calls off the deal because the film company failed to make the documentary. Then she looks at a framed photo in her office. The photo shows Katsuhira and Sonozaki when they were little. They're holding hands. Katsuhira has brown hair in that photo, unlike him at the present day who has white hair. Beside them, there are 5 other children around their age and 3 adults wearing lab coats. Sonozaki proceeds to turn over the photo. After a long discussion about Maki's situation, the Kiznaivas decide to try their best to overcome Maki's coldness and befriend her. They gather in front of her apartment building. First, each of them tries to send her a message asking her to play together. As expected, Maki ignores the messages. When that method doesn't work, the Kiznaivas shout out, "Maki, let's play," from outside of the building. Well, this doesn't work either, and Maki just gets even more annoyed. She calls Chidori, basically telling them to shut up. Nico just takes the risk and tells Maki that it's not her fault Ruru died. She also wishes Maki would tell them what she feels so they can understand her better. Maki is taken aback. She ends the call without saying anything. But Uta says he feels something warm inside his heart. Then the rain starts to pour. Their original plan of lighting fireworks kind of fails. The group moves to the beach, except for Uta, who stays near Maki's apartment to read the manga written by her. Maki approaches him. Uta asks Maki to read the last chapter of the manga because he knows she hasn't read it. As she opens up the pages of the book, she confesses that she had feelings for Ruru. However, she had to suppress it and pull herself away from her because she knew Ruru would die sooner or later. Ruru's death would be too much for Maki to bear if she ended up falling in love with her. The two of them then meet with the other Kiznaivas at the beach. Tanga and Nico are still adamant about playing with the fireworks, but Maki has an idea. She tells them to go swimming in the sea. Without thinking twice, Uta follows her order. The others immediately follow after him. On the other hand, the one who had the idea herself is just watching from afar. She's also reading the final chapter of her own manga, as Uta asked. All this time, Maki had thought that the final chapter would end with the protagonist cursing her lover after she died. But it turns out the very opposite way. Rather, the lover says, "If remembering me makes you painful, you can forget me anytime. After all, I love your smile." After Maki reads this line, light appears out of the Kiznaiva's wrists. But this time, it's different. They don't feel pain or a sense of burden in their heart. They quickly run to Maki, thinking something happened to her. But it turns out that Maki finally accepts them as people who are more than just friends and lovers, because their emotions are now connected. The others are elated hearing this, especially Nico. She decides that everyone should call her by her first name, Honoka. After that, Honoka recalls the time Ruru came up with the name Charles de Making, which comes from Ruru and Maki. While all of this is happening, Yamada and Urushibara are monitoring their emotional conditions. Their emotions are portrayed in a colored chart, and Yamada points out that it's the first time he's seen it. In the same room, Sonozaki says it's the color of longing. The 7 Kiznaivas are now going along really well. They're taking pictures at the photo booth. However, the weather outside is not as bright as their moods. It's still raining heavily and the whole city is covered in dark clouds. Katsuhira sends a message to Sonozaki, asking her to meet. As he looks outside the window, a sudden wave of memory hits him. It's the memory of him playing with other children when he was little, and he was sitting side by side with the little Sonozaki. He pulls himself together when Tanga calls him to ask whether he wants ice cream. Well, they should have known better that the ice cream shop was a trap. Some Gomorrans have been waiting inside to kidnap the 7 of them and bring them to their classroom where Yamada has some things to explain. First, he reiterates the stuff Sonozaki has explained before, such as the truth about their city, the Kizna experiment, etc. Then he discloses something important. It's the fact that connecting pain was never the experiment's true intention in the first place. Rather, what they wanted to achieve was to connect positive emotions like love or friendship. However, they've always failed to do it. Long ago, the committee tried to connect negative sensations like pain because it's easier than connecting positive emotions. They first did it successfully with orangutans. However, many kinds of problems arose when the experiment moved on to humans. Therefore, they decided to do it on people whose emotional states were closer to orangutan or hadn't fully developed yet. Children. The children they experimented on were the children of the researchers and the sponsors. Yamada adds that they're still alive now. Tanga gets mad hearing this, but Yamada acts indifferent. Not long after he leaves the room, a new mission appears: to get home safely after the typhoon calms down. A public announcement regarding the typhoon begins to be heard all over the city. It becomes almost impossible for the Kiznaivas to go home. Plus, they have the feeling that something else is waiting for them. Yup, they're right. The Gomorrans show up and try to disturb their peace like before. Yamada is now back in the monitor room. Using the Gomorrans, he tries to separate them into groups based on their romantic feelings. First, Uta and Honoka, although Honoka is still on hold because Uta's love is still unrequited. Then Hisomu is also on hold because they don't know who is he into. Finally, they have the complicated feelings group, which consists of the rest. Nico likes Tanga. Wait, what? At least that's what they believe. Tanga likes Chidori, Chidori likes Katsuhira, and Katsuhira likes me, Sonozaki says. Apparently she's aware of that. She also says that Katsuhira has expressed her love to her before this as well. She stands up and plans to go to the school to give the experiment a little push. Urushi follows her. They both arrive at a really quiet, abandoned underground train station. Urushi is surprised that the place still exists. Then Sonozaki rides the train to approach the school. Yamada's plan to separate the Kiznavers into groups has succeeded, and he sure has fun setting them up. Nico and Tanga are now stuck together in a room. Tanga tells Nico to put on a jacket because she's dripping wet. Seeing her in a jacket, he compliments that she looks cute. Nico gets embarrassed and turns red. Suddenly, a wave of pain hits Tanga. Actually, it's not pain. It's Nico's warm feeling. The other Kiznavers feel it too. Hisomu, Uta, and Honoka were initially together, but Hisomu hurt Honoka's feelings several times, so she ran away from him, followed by Uta. When they're away from Hisomu, Uta sees Honoka's shoulders shaking and attempts to hug her from behind, but she says, "Don't do it." Uta is afraid that their feelings are connected, but Honoka says it's just her hunch. She looks at Uta and smiles at him for the first time. The only ones left are Katsuhira and Chidori. After getting away from the Gomorrans, they stop in front of the school entrance. Chidori starts to get shy. She admits she has something that she's kept from Katsuhira for a while and wants to say it now. It really seems like she's trying to confess. Unfortunately for her, before she can even start saying anything, Katsuhira is hit by a wave of memory of his childhood, where he's running freely with other children, talking to a blue-haired girl who resembles Sonozaki, whom he calls Nori-chan. In this memory, the blue-haired girl asks if he's scared. In answer to this, Katsuhira says that he's not afraid of heights. He's afraid that it won't hurt even after he falls from a height. And of course, the blue-haired girl is the same girl who jumps from the building. Not a single word said by Chidori can be heard by him. He literally doesn't care about her confession. While she's still talking, he opens the school entrance door and runs through the rain. It's as if he can feel Sonozaki's presence, confirming that she's indeed the Nori-chan from his childhood. Because at the same time, she arrives at the schoolyard using the secret tunnel. When Katsuhira finds her, he notices a Kizna mark on the back of her neck. It lights up just like when a Kiznaiva gets a pain attack. Tanga and Nico find Chidori at the school entrance. She's devastated after Katsuhira runs to find Nori-chan. They suddenly experience a pain attack because Hisomu subdues to being violated by the Gomorrans. Because of that, they and Uta and Honoka come to him and hide in the audio-visual room. Little did they know Yamada had prepared something special for them. He turns on the projector to show Katsuhira's current whereabouts. He's now at the school gym with Nori-chan. The Kiznavers can see and hear both of them talking. Nori-chan asks whether Katsuhira likes him. He says he doesn't know, but he thinks about her a lot. Katsuhira also mentions the flashback about the falling girl he's always had. He realizes that it's most likely to be Sonozaki. He continues by asking the possibility that the two of them are also wound-bound. The other Kiznavers get a sudden pain attack, which is from Chidori's heart. She falls to her knees and cries. Knowing that Chidori is emotionally damaged, Tanga is mad at Katsuhira. He runs to the gym, and everybody except Nico and Chidori follows him. Nico is also disappointed because Tanga would go that far to protect Chidori. But she still tries to be positive. She persuades Chidori to stand up and go to the gym with her. At first, Chidori refuses, but after Nico lectures her for not facing her own pain, Chidori is moved. Eventually, she runs to the gym too. Nori-chan starts to explain things again. 12 years ago, Nori and Katsuhira were part of the group of children participating in the Kizna experiment. She starts to mention some names and asks if Katsuhira remembers them. Shiori with short hair, Yuki the plant and flower lover, Asuka who walked with a spring in her step. Hearing those names, Katsuhira's memories start flooding in. He sees himself as a child playing happily with the other children and running while holding hands with Nori-chan. However, seconds later, he sees a bunch of children lying on the ground screaming, "It hurts!" When Katsuhira realizes what happened, he's in utter shock. Something lights up from his chest. He can't breathe properly and he's sweating profusely. As Noriko opens his shirt, it shows a Kizna mark on Katsuhira's chest, the same one that Noriko has on her nape. Katsuhira's pain becomes more and more unbearable. Once again, he has a hallucination of Nori-chan falling from the building. He tries to save her. Yet before he can catch her, he's already awake, hugging Nori-chan. And for the first time ever, probably since he lost most of his emotions, he cries. The memories that come back to him make him vulnerable, and hugging Nori-chan makes him even more fragile. Without Katsuhira realizing it, the other Kiznaivas are already gathering at the door of the gym. He's only aware of their presence after he gets a pain attack that comes from Chidori, seeing him hugging Nori-chan. Chidori runs away from the scene. Tanga is enraged at Katsuhira for causing pain to Chidori. He pulls Katsuhira's collar and orders him to go after Chidori. After Katsuhira leaves the place, Tanga is also mad at Nori-chan for not telling them the whole story. He announces her as their enemy. Suddenly, a wave of attack hits them, but it's unknown what kind it is. They look back and see Nico crying. Nico herself doesn't know why she cries, but Nori-chan answers that it's her love for Tanga. Nico then runs from the gym out of embarrassment. Outside, the rain is pouring heavily. Katsuhira is chasing after Chidori in the middle of the rain, but once he catches her arm, Chidori begs him to let go while crying. Suddenly, Katsuhira hears her voice in his head saying, "Hug me." Then Chidori's Kizna mark lights up in red color. This has never happened before. All at once, the other Kiznaivas also experience the same thing. Chidori's voice appears in each of their minds, and their Kizna marks turn red. In the monitor room, Yamada is immensely delighted. However, Urushi seems to be disapproving. She's afraid that the students will break at this point. She plans to stop this and gets out of the room. Even though Chidori keeps telling Katsuhira to let go of her, the voice of her heart can't lie. Every Kiznaivas can hear that she wants Katsuhira to hug him. Her heart says it over and over again. Katsuhira then decides to pull and embrace her just like what he did to Nori-chan. But after fulfilling her heart's wish, Katsuhira hears her mind says, "You're awful for hugging me?" It makes him confused. Tanga suddenly shows up and throws a punch at Katsuhira. As he's beating Katsuhira to a pulp, Chidori starts to hear Tenga's thoughts in her mind. His heart's voice asks Chidori why he likes Katsuhira more than himself. Uta comes to the scene with Honoka and Hisomu, demanding Tanga to stop because they can hear his thoughts. In his anger, Tanga blurts out the fact that he likes Chidori. This makes Chidori shocked. The chaos doesn't stop there. They suddenly hear Nico's thoughts saying, "Give him to me." They look back and see her crying while she expresses how she's disappointed that they become like this even though they've been friends before. Surprisingly, the voice of her heart says, "We can't be friends." Honoka openly agrees with that. Now that they can hear each other's voices and be too close, they'll have no boundaries. This forces them to reveal each other's deepest side. She also admits that she wanted to be friends with them, but now that it comes to this, it's impossible for her. The voice of her heart says, "We can't be friends," shakingly. As she says this, tears run down her cheeks. The others also get a pain shock, implying that it hurts for her to say that. All the Kiznaivas collapse. The voices of their hearts scream, "It hurts!" They're all holding their chest. The red light on their wrists still doesn't go away. Katsuhira stands up. He seems to be the only one who's not hurt, physically or mentally. He watches as the Kiznaivas cower in pain around him. What he's seeing now is very similar to the memory he witnessed before. The memory of the children lying down and screaming out of pain. He recognizes that their pain is not from any wound, but from their hearts. He asks whether it originates from him. However, Hisomu says that it's not from one person, but from everyone's heart. Then Katsuhita wonders why he's the one who's not affected. The next morning, the Kiznaivas wake up, still in the same location as where they had an extreme pain attack last night. Urushii greets them and assures them that the Kizna will be released once the summer ends. After that, Nori-chan appears and announces the Kiznaivas can clear their mission. Since that day, the Kiznaivas try to stay away from each other so that they don't get anyone hurt. It also seems like they can only hear one's inner thoughts only if they emit a strong emotion. So to avoid that, they don't get in contact with one another. But one day, Hisomu visits Katsuhira's apartment and brings him food. Katsuhira remembers how Chidori used to always bring food to him. But now they never meet face to face even though they live beside each other. Also, somehow the Kizna mark on his chest is now gone. On the first day of school after the summer ends, everyone is back to class. The Kiznaivas' marks are all gone with no trace. They're no longer wound-bound now. Yamada asks about their summer vacation. He asks whether they had summer camps, tests of courage, lit fireworks, confessed their love, had their hearts broken, basically everything the ex-Kiznaivas went through. It's clear that he's making fun of them. After class, Uta tries to approach Honoka, but she's back to the cold and conceited Honoka before she was a Kiznaiva. Meanwhile, Hisomu and Katsuhira get approached by Nico, who wishes to make up with them. Both kindly agree, and the three of them hold hands. Nico's eyes expand. She's filled with joy, and the three of them happily spin in a circle. Tanga looks at this from afar and wipes his eyes. While this is happening, Nori-chan has a meeting with the mayor. He comes to her office to inform her that he needs to shut down the lab because there will be a government investigation. It seems like it's almost impossible for the city to continue its experiment, but Nori-chan still insists on doing it. Nori-chan stands up from her seat, saying she wants to show him the result of the experiment. She then runs out to the rooftop of the building and stands on the edge. A flashback of a memory when she was a child shows up. Behind her, Urushi and the mayor are trying to stop her and screaming out her name. However, it's too late, because Nori-chan eventually jumps. At school, Katsuhira gets a shock of pain in his heart. His chest also lights up. This is really weird, considering the Kizna has been released from him. It's even weirder that the pain is physical. We know he's never experienced any physical pain. He quickly realizes that the pain comes from Nori-chan. The three of them then move to find her. It doesn't take long for Katsuhira to find the door to the secret passage that leads to the school. They enter it, but soon they're seen by Urushi when she's talking with the mayor. After the mayor leaves, she finds them and takes them to her office. Katsuhira asks about Nori-chan's condition in the office. Urushi assures him that she's safe. Turns out she didn't actually fall, more like she tripped and passed out. But if Nori-chan is okay, where did Katsuhira's pain come from? Katsuhira begs Urushibi to tell him the history between him and Nori-chan. Urushi then begins to tell the story. 12 years ago, 19 children were gathered to be test subjects, including Katsuhira and Nori-chan. At that time, she and Yamada were still junior researchers. The original plan of the experiment was to make all 19 children split their pain equally. However, there was an error when conducting it, leading one child to bear the pain of 5 children. The researchers tried to revert it back to normal, but instead of doing that, they just committed more errors. As a result, that child had to bear the pain of the other 18 children as well, and that pain still hasn't gone away until now. That child turns out to be Nori-chan. The only way she manages to live until the present day is through medication, which we saw she injected earlier. The medication also suppresses all her sensations. This explains why she looks as emotionless as Katsuhira all the time. As for the other children, some of them permanently lost their sensations and emotions that were taken by Nori-chan. Thankfully, some others still managed to retain a little bit of their senses, including Katsuhira. This explains why he can't feel pain at all. Children like Katsuhira were released from the experimental facility. However, the others lost their senses entirely. Nico asks what happened to them. Urushi proceeds to bring the three of them to an open space surrounded by a seemingly abandoned building. They see things that are usually found at a children's park there, such as a seesaw and a climber. Katsuhira focuses on the statue located in the center. Once he realizes what that is, he runs to it as fast as he can. At the base of the statue, 5 people are sitting. Their hair is white like Katsuhira. They have no facial expressions at all. Even though their eyes are open, they don't react to anything. They just stare at the emptiness. Katsuhira recognizes them. 3 of them are Yuki, Shiori, and Asuka, the names mentioned by Nori-chan that triggered his memories. Katsuhira calls Yuki's name, but he doesn't give an answer even though Katsuhira is right in front of him. He then looks at a person who is presumed to be Asuka and has a flashback. In his memory, she used to snitch on him for liking Nori-chan. But then Nori-chan cheerfully answers, "I also love Katsuhira." Katsuhira falls down to his knees. He screams and cries. This time, he can no longer hold the emotions that have been welling up inside him. Back home, Katsuhira calls Chidori from his balcony. He tells her about the moment he saw his 5 childhood friends. At that time, he felt a deep sadness, a churning feeling in his stomach. He wants to confirm with Chidori whether those feelings are what other people have always experienced. He also thanks her for always protecting him from those feelings. Throughout the call, Chidori is silent. The moment the call ends, she gets really frustrated and cries. To her, that's just the same as rejection, but she remembers what happened that afternoon. Earlier, Tanga approached Chidori. He would like Chidori to just straight up reject him. For him, it's easier to not answer someone's feelings than to have his feelings unanswered. However, she got angry at Tanga. Chidori realizes she's just as selfish for that. After Katsuhira ends the calls and goes back inside, Hisomu gives him an idea of why he felt the pain earlier, even though Nori-chan was supposed to be the one who bore it. Maybe Katsuhira wants to feel pain again. Pain is something that can be felt when you think about it, and Katsuhira might have opened his old wound. The other ex-Kiznavas begin to have an existential crisis. Honoka wonders what she looked like with a smile. Uta questions the person he used to be. Tanga also can't remember who he was when he was a Kizna. Meanwhile, the mayor is running out of time. They have to shut down the experiment. Money is short for them. He begs Urushi and Yamada to persuade Nori-chan to agree to end it. Urushi seems to agree with the mayor. She also doesn't want to see Nori-chan break even more. However, Yamada is still adamant about granting Nori-chan's wish. At school, Nori-chan surprises her classmates, especially the ex-Kiznivers, with her sudden appearance. In the middle of the class, Katsuhira asks her to talk outside, which creates a ruckus. Chidori doesn't seem happy about it. Outside, Katsuhira reveals that he has learned everything from Urushi. Katsuhira believes that Nori-chan wants him to help her, but Nori-chan denies it. According to her, Nori-chan, who exists inside himself, is not the real her. She proceeds to say that true happiness won't be achieved without sharing pain with everyone. However, Katsuhira still thinks that he's not wrong. Nori-chan calls him an imbecile and walks away. After class, Katsuhira gathers the other 6 ex-Kiznivers at the rooftop of the building. He exposes the things that has been bugging his mind and admits that it's that friendship that lets them go through everything. The others are of course surprised to hear this, except Nico, who's overjoyed. It doesn't sound like something that Katsuhira would say, but then Katsuhira proceeds to explain the friends he had when he was a child. It's painful knowing all the ex-Kiznivers, not just Nori-chan, had to bear his negative feelings. The other 6 suddenly experience pain in their chest at the same time. They suspect that it's from Kizna, but it's almost impossible as it has been released. Katsuhira then admits that he wants to feel pain for himself and for the others, so he doesn't want to forget anymore. Seconds later, he collapses. They bring her to the infirmary. While they're at it, they also ask Urushi about the pain they felt just before and accuse that the Kizna is still installed within them. However, Urushi only smiles and says, "That was your own pain." Apparently, the ex-Kiznivers don't realize how strong their bond is. The fact that it happened is proof they don't need to be equipped with any kind of system to feel each other's pain. After seeing them off and after Katsuhira wakes up, Urushi hears some students fighting in the corridor. She's about to intervene when one of them screams out, "I'm connected to Nori-chan." Suddenly, a public announcement is heard throughout the whole city. It's the voice of Nori-chan. She begins by pointing out how awful it is to bear pain alone. The mayor is panicking and trying to solve the situation. A new form of Gomorrans can be seen around the city. Their color is black. Nori-chan says that they can share each other's pain. Then she asks everyone in the city, "Won't you form a bond with me?" Urushi tries to take action. She drives her car and takes Katsuhira with her. She can't let this happen because if it continues, Nori-chan will break. She tells Katsuhira a little bit about Nori-chan's background. Nori-chan was the first child who was put in the experiment facility. She was always lonely. But that was until Katsuhira and the other children came. She became cheerful as they started to form bonds through pain. Because of this, she believed in the Kizna system and wished to be connected forever to the others. This is what leads her to bear the pain of 19 people in the first place. It's her wish from the bottom of her heart to never release the Kizna system. The problem is, Nori-chan never even acknowledged her own heart's wish. She still believes she can save the 5 trapped kids by sharing her pain with everyone. That's why she's been obsessed with continuing the experiment no matter what it takes. And now she's going to connect everyone. Katsuhira calls Chidori to inform her about the situation. He asks the ex-Kiznivers for their help to save Nori-chan. The group is conflicted about whether they should do it or not. Honoka thinks that there's no point in it. Nico, on the other hand, doesn't care about Nori-chan but wishes to help Katsuhira anyway because they're already friends. They start to get moved by her words. Even now, Chidori wants to save her just because it's Katsuhira's wish. Finally, all the ex-Kiznivers are resolved to join Katsuhira. Katsuhira seems to have an idea of where to find Nori-chan, and it's on the X-shaped bridge, which is the exact same place she jumped in his memory. He and Urushi then steal a police car and go to find her. As Katsuhira predicted, Nori-chan is already standing at the very top of the bridge. She's ready to jump when Katsuhira and Urushi arrive. Nori-chan asks him why he wants to stop her, when being connected to each other makes the city a better place. She reminisces about her childhood memory when everyone was never alone, and everything was so peaceful because pain connected them, and it was all thanks to the Kizna system. Katsuhira strongly denies this, but when Nico-chan asks why, he has a hard time answering it. All of a sudden, 6 other ex-Kiznivers interrupt. Tanga is angry at Katsuhira for not being able to answer that while he was the one who brought up things about friendship earlier. Nico also says that friendship is the answer to everything, but Nori-chan replies to them with a question. Wasn't it the Kizna system that successfully made you guys friends? You have a point, Honoka says abruptly. She badmouths the others and complains about how she can't get away from the others even after the Kizna gets released. She really doesn't understand why it happens. Nori-chan challenges them again. If you don't understand, why don't you just let the Kizna system connect? Before she can even finish her question, Honoka already shouts her answer. It's because we don't understand. The fact that they don't understand is what makes them try to understand each other. And when they get too close, they stay away from each other. That cycle continues, and it's what makes them friends. That's what Honoka believes. But Nori-chan defends herself by saying that they're an exception. Chidori can't accept this. She points out the fact that Katsuhira still loves Nico-chan even after everything she put him through. She almost cries as she says this. The others try to calm her, but Hisomu tells her it's okay to keep going. He then adds another point. A person wouldn't need to share their pain if they don't even know where that pain comes from. In answer to this, Nori-chan believes that the love Katsuhira has for her originated from the Kizna system as well. Yet, Katsuhira quickly refutes it. Back then, he loved Nori-chan for her cheerful and smiley personality. And he still loves her now even though her personality has changed and even after they're not connected. He adds that the others may love her too for who she is, not because of the Kizna. Nori-chan doesn't understand what Katsuhira means by that. Because she doesn't understand, the experiment must continue. She prepares herself to jump. But then Katsuhira asks a question that stuns her. Why should we share our wounds? He begs for her to let go of everyone's pain, referring to the other 18 kids from the experiment. He assures her that they will not leave from the inside of her even though she releases their pain. All at once, the Kizna marks on Nori-chan's nape and Katsuhira's chest react. Urushi then adds her point. Unless Nori-chan releases all their pain, she will never be truly connected with everyone. Nori-chan slowly descends from the peak of the bridge in confusion. She just doesn't understand them. Katsuhira tries as hard as he can to climb up and reach her. He answers that it's okay to not understand because they can understand each other with time if they're always together, even without the Kizna. He then screams, "I love you," out loud at Nori-chan. As soon as Katsuhira confesses to her, Nori-chan's Kizna mark reacts violently, leading her to fall. It also triggers her memories of her childhood. She remembers how the children asked her to give their pain back, but she refused because she was afraid to be alone again. However, Katsuhira promised he wouldn't leave her alone. After that, Katsuhira said, "I'm sure you love me too, Nori-chan, and you also love everyone." Then everything falls to pieces. Katsuhira manages to catch Nori-chan before she falls down to the sea below, but also ends up falling. Accidentally, their foreheads hit each other, and both of them scream, "It hurts!" They both manage to get safely on the land. The 6 ex-Kiznaivas come to Katsuhira. When asked how he feels, he answers that his heart pounds, his chest stings, and her knees throb. He finally knows what pain feels like. As he smiles and tears up, he says, "It feels good." Watching him, Nori-chan also whispers to herself that she feels good. In the epilogue, 2 weeks later, everything is back to normal. The experiment facility is getting repurposed into a park, and the 5 trapped kids are slowly adjusting themselves to their new life. We now have a new form of Gomorin, the black and white one. We see Honoka hanging out with Uta, but surprisingly, Honoka is the one who flirts with Uta. Tanga and Chidori are also hanging around together. Chidori apologizes for being selfish. She also admits that she's been thinking about Tanga lately, which makes him embarrassed. They don't know that Nico and Hisomu are watching them. Nico still wishes to have Tanga for herself, but she keeps a positive attitude. Katsuhira himself is staying at the hospital after getting injured. She gets approached by Nori-chan as she's about to caress Katsuhira's cheek. The 6 ex-Kiznaivas surprise them with their visit. Chidori gets agitated seeing what she's about to do. Nico pulls out the photo booth picture they took when they were still Kiznaivas and shows it to Nori-chan. Nori-chan comments that their closeness looks genuine in that photo. Nico then invites Nori-chan to take another photo like that with them together next time. Nori-chan smiles in agreement with that. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.